recording this. All right, welcome everyone to the Bay Area Greenprint equity module. This is an exciting workshop we're going to be sharing. It's an evolution of the Bay Area Greenprint brought to you by a number of different groups we can see on the screen there that are really trying to improve I think equity in a few different, how we think about equity in a few different ways. The Greenprint was launched back in 2017, and I think when we thought about equity then, it was really trying to bring information to people free, without any paywalls or sign-ins, just able to access the data, and really being able to think about how we can kind of break down silos around how we think about the environment, and trying to organize the data that we have and how we understand the environment in kind of new ways. And so as we launched that tool and began to think about, who are we building this tool for and how is it going to be used, something that was always in our mind was just recognizing that, kind of as we see in this picture here, there's not generally a clear difference sometimes between where the kind of urban areas and where those green open space areas, continue on, and recognizing that there's that kind of a continuity in land use that I think we can start to think about a little bit more in the launch of this tool. And so what we're trying to bring about, and it started, I think, another innovation we brought a few years ago was adding urban greening to the tool, understanding urban heat island effect and other issues kind of at a spatial level. And now where we're at is really trying to bring the human element of our environment kind of front and center into this analysis and tool, the Bay Area Greenprint. So I think hopefully what we're really trying to do is bring greater attention to social equity in the discussion of how we develop our cities, where we plan for new resources, investments, and making sure that we kind of elevate voices that have often been distinguished kind of in this development process of, building into the hills and out to the sea or out to the bay. Hopefully everyone's had a chance, if you haven't already, to be able to leave your name and an organization in the chat just to give us a sense of who's here. It'd be very helpful. So let's see. We're going to be just a quick little look at our agenda for today. Tom Robinson is going to be leading us through a discussion around the overview of the Bay Area Greenprint. I'll dive in a little bit more on the equity module. We'll get a live demonstration from Carrie Schloss, and then we'll bring question and answer portion at the end. But as questions arise, please feel free to just log them in the chat as well. I think with that, I can do just a quick introduction maybe of the core team members, just really fast. So I'm Adam Garcia. Go pass it off to Tom Robinson, Carrie Schloss, Tom Baring, and Liz O'Donoghue. So from Nature Conservancy, and Carrie, Tom, and Liz, and Tom is from the Together Bay Area. So with that, I think I will pass it on to Tom for the for our overview.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Thanks so much, and thanks again, everybody, for being with us today. Thanks for taking an hour out of your busy schedules to learn about this new module we have in the Greenprint, the Bay Area Greenprint. As Adam mentioned, I'm Tom Robinson, he, him. I'm with Together Bay Area, and I'm honored to be a part of the Greenprint project team. And just as Adam mentioned, we're joined today by Carrie Schloss, Tom Baring, and Liz O'Donoghue from the Nature Conservancy. We also have Dan Rademacher from Green Info Network, who are the sort of the digital architects of the Greenprint. So what you see on the web, their team built, and we also have Greenbelt Alliance is part of the Bay Area Greenprint team as well. So we're of course here to tell you about the new equity module of the Bay Area Greenprint, which is really, as Adam mentions, it's kind of our first step toward providing data support through the Greenprint to on-the-ground work focused on environmental justice and incorporating social equity issues into planning. I want to kind of underscore this is our first step. Our team, as well as probably everybody on this call, have a lot to learn, and there's we obviously are looking at equity issues through a data lens, and that is an admittedly very limited limited lens. So I just wanted to kind of call that out here at the outset. But first, let me just orient you to the Greenprint. So the Bay Area Greenprint has, as Adam mentioned, been alive and growing since 2017. It's a land use and transportation infrastructure planning tool. And its goal is to make it easy as possible to reveal nature's many values for regional and local planners, with the ultimate goal of seeing growth in the Bay Area that balances housing, business, and transportation needs with the benefits we all receive from nature and agriculture. And the Greenprint does this by, one, making it easy to incorporate natural resource conservation early in the planning process by giving real numbers to potential impacts to nature's values and benefits by a proposed project, for instance. And giving land use and transportation planners what we hope is a one-stop shop for and not having to go to multiple sites, multiple sources of information, and multiple people to get vetted data on their area of interest. We've done our best to sort of cast a wide fish net and pull in those data sources for you. And we want to put nature's values and benefits in the same terms and units that funders seek. So we want this tool to be used for folks who are looking for funding within certain thematic areas. And finally, we want to demonstrate that nature's many values and benefits are real, and in many cases, actually quantifiable. Those are kind of our guiding objectives. And our target audience, if you see yourself or your organization in any of the bubbles on this slide, then chances are the Greenprint serves some of your information needs. And we've targeted the process of land use and infrastructure planning and have done our best to anticipate the needs of government agencies, not-for-profits, and the consultants who assist them. Now, the Greenprint was not designed and built in a bubble. Its staying power since 2017 lies in the advice and the guidance we've received from individuals from all of these great groups since actually well before it launched in 2017, and along the way, leading all the way up to this latest module that we've added. All right, so here's what the Greenprint is all about. The Greenprint characterizes nature's values and benefits through the multiple lenses you see here, and in the form of metrics that are most important in a land use and transportation infrastructure planning context. And since its launch in 2017, we have deepened the value of the Greenprint in these different areas. And as you can see, equity is the latest. Now, there's a lot of ways you can access, you may have seen and kind of maybe zeroed in on the policy icon listed on the previous slide. Now, the policy folks here today on the call may be wondering, well, which policies are you talking about? And one of the most valuable parts of the Greenprint is the collection of many, many local, regional, and state policies that have been mapped. And these have been incorporated into the Greenprint. They include policies around food production, water quality, biodiversity and habitat, outdoor recreation, and open space. And from my perspective, this is one of the Greenprint's most one of the values of the Greenprint that I cherish the most is these mapped policies. And the idea is you can find out which policies might apply to your area of interest. It's kind of a first of its kind as far as I can tell for the Bay Area. Now, accessing information in the Greenprint is easy. There are lots of ways to do it. We have a county by county comparison dashboard for kind of high level statistics, like how many acres are conserved in Marin County versus Contra Costa County, for instance. A navigable map for visual analysis of over 100 key environmental data sets. A conservation assessment tool where you can find priority areas based on your organization's values and priorities. And perhaps the most important one, a multi-benefit reporting tool that produces custom reports for your area of interest. And we have a fully built out glossary and methods pages for learning and going to original information sources. Now, in its 6-year life, the Greenprint has had a significant impact on the Bay Area planning landscape. It has been incorporated into or used in the production of many important regional planning efforts. And we're excited to have a robust partnership with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. MTC has been a user of the Greenprint and thought partner since its early days. So hopefully that was an orientation and you feel oriented to the Greenprint. Now let's get to the topic of the day, the equity module. To tell you more, I'm going to invite Adam back to the virtual stage, who's been really a principal architect of what you're going to see today. So Adam?
All right, great, thank you. So the Bay Area Greenprint and the equity module our goal is to really be able to support the on-the-ground work focused on environmental justice and elevate equity issues into planning. We're going to explore a little bit more what environmental justice and environmental equity mean, I think, in some of the categories we've developed. But we also want to recognize that we are entering into an already established field. We largely have environmental background, so we recognize there has been a lot of work in this field, but still feel like there are some benefits that the Greenprint can offer to this discussion. When we think about how the Greenprint fits into the existing resources and efforts, well, one of the strengths of the Greenprint is the reporting function that Tom just mentioned, being able to get that custom view of any area, many pre-selected areas, and understand how, as I was telling you earlier, really breaking down the silos now between kind of urban and natural, in the natural between food production and water supply. So understanding how these different elements overlap in a spatial sense. So one of the innovations we've brought and we'll look at is just being able to understand how those layers intersect through some map layer transparency options where you can kind of see those specific interactions that you're seeking out or trying to understand. So the Greenprint is including a couple different online tools that we use to help consider how we developed our own tool, but also as additional resources for you to consider in your work in specific communities. One of the big ones was the Bay Area Equity Atlas. We include a link in that to that website and body of research in the Greenprint report for the equity module. There's also a resources page with an equity section, which includes primarily online tools and resources that can help various groups that we had identified earlier as our target audience to understand how we can affect change in those different areas. So recognizing we are, one tool in many, but really trying to be somewhat of a hub for some of those other different resources too. I'll maybe just pose this question as well. We're very interested in thinking about if there are other resources we can put into the equity module. So Carrie, I think maybe for her presentation, she can show you real quick where that section is. But if you have any thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat. Really thinking about what might planners, consultants, community groups need to understand environmental justice issues in their area. Ideally, these are areas that can cover the entire Bay Area too. So just something to think about as we move through. And so during this process, we reached out to a number of different groups that we felt really had a solid understanding with environmental justice, environmental equity issues through their work. We really leaned on them heavily for case studies, for kind of trying to imagine what this tool would look like, what kind of data would they want to have, for what reasons. And so that was a big part of what went into developing this tool. So I wanted to send, just a heartfelt thank you to these groups: Woodsong Associates, Policy Link, Alameda County, Together Bay Area, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Communities for a Better Environment, California Environmental Justice Alliance, the Green Lining Institute, and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. So from these discussions, what really came out was that kind of one of the things we were talking about of breaking down silos, trying to figure out how do all of these various vulnerabilities and risks, land use issues, how do those all interconnect, and how can we get a better understanding of what communities are facing? This also, the tool gives you a snapshot, essentially, a snapshot with the best data we have right now. But you can think of that as kind of the baseline for the information we have to be able to enter into conversation with peers, with businesses, with governments about what we need to do to be able to help really make sure we can conserve and maintain and steward our natural resources, as kind of recognize them both in the urban and open space areas. Another point was made of just giving recognition to the many communities that are not in a city or feel, left out if they're lumped together with the entire county or even just the unincorporated county. So we'd want to bring greater perspective to those areas, and then also just understand that, your home is your home environment. That's another part of this kind of urban natural landscape that we think about. So figuring out, well, how can we really help support, fair housing initiatives as well, and understand how this urban investment in, lower income disadvantaged communities can often lead to green gentrification, for instance, or displacement, where those investments for the community you're trying to make now have been priced out and can no longer live there. So understanding to at least some initial scopes, not that we have the answers to those problems and approach, but just where are those places that are experiencing these issues? So we broke up the equity module into a few different sections, 4 main ones. There's an overview, and then the idea of, when we think about where people live across urban areas, some are closer to parks, some are closer to trails, some are closer to bike paths. So, ideally in a landscape where we have equal access to all of those great resources, we can at least now start to identify where those areas are that are missing, access to those open space amenities. Park need is one that we've had for a while, but I think is, a good example, but we can look at many others as well. Having just a clean environment to live in, I think, is the other, basic fundamental aspect of our environment. And so depending on where you live, you might be exposed to more air pollution. It might be hotter because there's less trees and more concrete. How we're exposed to different environmental issues, I think are something that we can look at in this tool. Housing and then demographics, I think, are both ways of just being able to really understand to a higher degree that level of urban and environmental interplay. Who are the people that we're talking about in these neighborhoods, for instance? What are the issues they're facing? I think those are just kind of some baseline fundamental questions. There are much more in-depth, data sources we can go to, but what we offer here is just to give that kind of high-level perspective. So the equity overview, as I mentioned, provides a little bit of background for those just wanting to understand the issue maybe for the first time. And there you can see also provides a link to the Bay Area Equity Atlas. This is somewhat of our disclaimer as well too. It's really important to just understand what the local issues are on the ground first. But if you do want to, get a quick understanding from that 60,000 foot level, then the Greenprint can provide you kind of that quick little peek. For disparities in access, here are the ones I mentioned, kind of looking at trails, bicycle paths, parks. These examples shown are for San Mateo County, county-wide. So you can understand a little bit more, kind of depending on what area of interest and what scale you're looking at. Those numbers are obviously going to change. What we've added in these cards is to say, well, here's the total, for instance, number of bicycle paths across San Mateo County, 163 miles. Within that 163 miles, about 24% of them are in equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities. So that's combining both the Cal Enviro screen, disadvantaged communities, and the equity priorities from MTC into kind of a single metric there. But that gives us then some perspective of kind of what's the total and how much is represented within that equity priority community or disadvantaged community. And sometimes this can be helpful to, depending on the scale that you're looking at, to help focus your efforts to make sure that if those percentages are low compared to what the balance is in your county or area of interest, you can take appropriate action. Here in disparities in exposure, again, we have kind of those main issue areas we're highlighting where pollution, wildfire risk in the wildland-urban interface, urban heat island. These are different ways we can understand how people are kind of under pressure from the natural environment and the built environment as well. Sea level rise, contaminated sites, can't possibly begin to try to keep up with what EnviroStore and GeoTracker already track for understanding kind of ground and water pollution. But there's at least links to be able to go and enter in your address to find out more. A new data set also, the California Climate Priority Populations is available. And I should say, I think these were the layers that we decided upon given our considerations of funding and the use cases provided by our advisors for the equity module. So this is, I think, our best start that we can with what we have, but we're always very interested in improving upon this. So here are our housing sections as well, looking at the tax credit allocation opportunity map, and then the displacement typologies from the efforts by UC Berkeley to understand how different neighborhoods are under pressure through urban displacement. Here is our demographics section. This was a really big effort put forward by Green Info Network to kind of make these charts be able to interact at these scales where you can select nearly any area and get instant some basic demographic information. So big kudos to them on figuring how to make this work. But there's information up here, just very basic kind of understanding income disparity, the race, and kind of total population. And so those charts are also spelled out here. So for instance, in San Mateo County, 2% of the population identifies Black, and 48% of them are in equity priorities communities or disadvantaged communities. So that those kinds of statistics, I think, can often be shocking and hopefully spur us into action and understand how to, take on the many strategies that I know we already are trying to do to be able to address these disparities. So as I was saying, we have a great number of new ways to be able to look at the data now too. Previously, it was only with kind of countywide and cities and watersheds. But now one of the things we really heard was just, being able to report at a finer level, understanding how neighborhoods can work together with this information and figure out, what are some local issues even maybe the community can rally together to help address. Census tracts also, are used in a lot of federal and state funding applications. So this can give you kind of that snapshot of information if you're trying to work on one of the many different funding sources that the government provides. Here's unincorporated county areas. So this is taking out all of the cities, those jurisdictions, and just analyzing the unincorporated land. So obviously this is very important for our county planners to be able to, look across the landscape and be able to dive in and see where maybe those disparities issues are, or even kind of the natural resources data that we have as well. This one I think maybe I'm most excited about, just being able to, having grown up in the largest census designated place, Castro Valley. It's really great to have that be able to now have its Greenprint report be instantaneous, letting planners or citizens, community groups from those different census designated places be able to, I think, just not get lumped in with all the unincorporated county. We're all just one unincorporated county, I think, is obviously very disheartening. So giving recognition to the diversity of those locales is very exciting. And then in terms of just, I think, functionality, but making sure we can access the different ideas that are being displayed in the tool here, we're looking at the transparency option that we added a few months ago. So this gives us the option to select a few layers and then be able to, give that transparent look to each one and see where the overlap is. So here we're looking at the darker green areas are the urban forest carbon storage, and then the darker orange, brownish areas are those park needs. So we can start to see where, park need maybe has a lot of greenery already, but could be used maybe for some other purpose. Whereas, parks in areas where there isn't a lot of greenery, you really want to make sure you create a little urban forest if you can there as a potential recommendation. But not only in the equity module, we really wanted to be able to expand the tool's perspective to focus on equity in all aspects of our kind of nature's values and benefits. So in this case, this is the urban greening module, but this same highlighted area where you can kind of understand the percentage of the equity priority or disadvantage area exists in all of our tabular reports now. So this gives us a sense of where the impacts are highest, kind of both in terms of this shape is representative of all of Sonoma County. So there's 3% of Sonoma County has a kind of high urban heat island temp. That's representative of about 7% of the total for the Bay Area. But within Sonoma County, about 21% of the equity priority disadvantaged area experiences high levels of urban heat island effect. So it's a helpful metric. It takes a little bit of interpretation depending on what tabular item you're looking at, depending on if it's park need or thinking about water resources or farmland. So we're hoping to have a little bit more clarification on that in some of our online resources, but that's a new addition to the tool. So as I was mentioning, how does the Greenprint fit in with what's existing already? So here's just a quick diagram, not to say that these are the only players or the only ways to think about it, but just a simplified version for our purposes today, is in terms of the Bay Area Equity Atlas, that really takes a broad view of equity across the region, down to the jurisdictional level to really understand what equity issues are. The spatial analysis that the Greenprint offers gives you a chance to look in a little bit closer at specific communities. And then one of the great organizations in California, CEJA, is working on green zones, just trying to figure out how we can make sure we minimize pollution exposure to our communities, among many other great works. So we're going to jump into our case studies real quick. We're thinking of these case studies in terms of those 3 new geographies we just added. So census tract, unincorporated county, and then census designated place. So this first one is looking at the census tract. And so this is the census tract number here. This is actually in Fairfield, right on the border with Suisun City. And what this provides is just that, more granular level at the kind of planning level. You can see West Texas Street. I know people have seen that driving on 80 as an exit. Gives that more granular level to understand where the real priorities are for urban tree planting. So just for a quick background, this is a layer that looks at pollution exposure, urban heat island effect, lack of urban trees, and impermeable pavement. So it kind of combines those different aspects to understand where does it make the most sense to really prioritize our tree planting efforts. So these potentially could be printed out, for instance, and be used at this neighborhood level to help organize tree planting with the city and residents and businesses. But just one potential use of many to be able to look at that finer kind of neighborhood level when we think of a neighborhood in terms of kind of that census tract spread. And then here, we're going to just take a quick look at the unincorporated county. So this is Alameda County. And so you can see it's unincorporated lands there. And so as we're going through, we can kind of understand a little bit more. And you've seen most of this data already, but just to show you how we can understand where are the park poor areas that we should be focusing on within the county. Are there California climate priority populations that can be considered for potential funding measures or funding applications to improve the conditions of those areas? The wildland urban interface, so seeing where those frontline communities are existing that need the most protection, and particularly where might they have disadvantaged or equity priority communities overlapping with the wildland urban interface. And air pollution risk, this is particulate matter, 2.5 microns, thinking about where are those corridors, emission sources. This is data from about 2013, but provides kind of the best spatial view of county-wide or Bay Area Air Quality Management district-wide pollution impacts. So we're going to be jumping out of PowerPoint real quick, and Carrie will be taking us on a live demo. This is along the coast here in Rodeo, Contra Costa. And if you weren't quite sure what the census designated places are, here's just a few I mentioned. Castro Valley is in Alameda, Bay Point in Contra Costa, Marin has Sleepy Hollow, Napa County would be a Silverado Resort, San Mateo, North Fair Oaks, Santa Clara has a Burbank, Solano would be Green Valley, and in Sonoma County would be Guerneville. So those, exist all across the county. So I think this is a great way, all across the Bay Area in every county. So a great way to be able to lift the voices within those CDPs. What we're looking at here is the Phillips 66 San Francisco refinery, just within close proximity to the CDP of Rodeo. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then maybe be able to hand it off to Carrie.
Thanks, Adam. And thanks, Tom, also for that great intro. I just want to make sure you guys can see the Bay Area Greenprint here. I'm sharing my screen. Yep, okay. So this is the homepage where you'll get to when you go to bayareagreenprint.org if you haven't been there before. There's many ways, as Tom mentioned, to access this information. So you can access it through a dashboard, or the heart of it really is this Analyze and Report tab, which I'll take you into. But just to point out that there's a lot of information where you can get up to speed on nature's values and benefits and the other things that are in the Greenprint along with the equity module. So here we'll go into the Analyze and Report tab, where this will take you to a map of the Bay Area where you can have access to over 100 different map layers. So for example, we can look at where some of these equity priority areas are. We can also look at, learn about what the layer is and where it comes from. So we have a glossary entry for every data set in the Greenprint, and you can always click on this I tab to learn more about where the data comes from and what it means. There's a number of ways to get reports in the Greenprint. You can draw an area, drop a pin, buffer it, draw a line. You can also upload a shapefile if you have your own spatial information. But what is also in this is you can choose different places, cities, counties, watersheds. But now, as Adam mentioned, new with this equity module update is the ability to get really quick reporting on census designated places, census tracts, and unincorporated county areas. So that's where you would access this here. We'll do a census designated place report, and we can select the area by choosing it here, or just by zooming in and clicking it on the map. So here we'll choose Rodeo and click Get Report. And instantly we have a report of over 100 different data sets summarized here. So first we can get a really quick overview of the area, the acreage, what county it's in, the types of it, which watersheds it intersects with, how much is protected or public. And then we have reporting on all of these different nature's values and benefits, and we'll dive into some of those. But I'm going to start first with the equity module so we can see live the types of information that Adam shared. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom first because I think it's so helpful that before we even learn about the different inequities or disparities in exposure and access in the place, to get a picture for the demographics. And so scrolling down to the bottom is where you'll see different percentages broken down by race or by income, and then screening across the different demographics for which are found more in equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities. And then scrolling back up to the top, here we'll start with taking a look at disparities in access in this area. So we can see that there are over 200 acres in park poor neighborhoods, and 34% of which are in equity priority areas. So here then we could click on the map layer to see where are those 200 acres and where do they intersect with equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities. So we can click on park need and just scroll back up to the map, and it will have turned that layer on. So we can see the very high to moderate park need intersecting here with equity priority communities. And one of these new features is being able to have transparency in this, so you can kind of dial that back and really be able to see how these different things intersect. In addition, we can look at disparities in exposure. In this area, there are over 1,000 acres of urban heat islands, and 80% of those are either in equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities. We can see that there's also 51 acres that have higher risk of pollution for particulate matter, and 24% are in equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities. So you can really get a sense for some of these disparities in exposure. And as you scroll through, you can always click on the layer and look at where that falls out on in your area and where there might be opportunities to address some of these disparities in exposure or access. And then this is where there's some information on housing. So we provide information on opportunity areas for citing potential affordable housing, and then also better understanding which areas might already be at risk of gentrification or have ongoing gentrification. And then I would like to also just switch over to some other tabs in the Greenprint. So we also have this urban greening area, and you can see here not only the areas for urban heat island and the some equity implications of where those fall out, the percentage in equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities, but also then where those might intersect with areas for priority landscapes for urban tree planting. So you could kind of see where there's both a threat and a potential opportunity to address that threat in the same place. And you can see them both on the map. And this transparency adjustment is very useful for trying to view both of these layers together to see where those opportunities might exist. Even within our other nature's values and benefits, like biodiversity and habitat, for example, you could see where there are priority areas for biodiversity and biodiversity protection in the Bay Area, and get a look at what percentage are falling within equity priority areas or disadvantaged communities, where we can both invest in nature's values and benefits to provide more of those equitable access to communities, but also protect biodiversity and wildlife. We can also take a look at where nature provides solutions for water quality by providing natural areas around our active river area, and where some of those are falling within equity priority or disadvantaged communities. So really taking a broader equity lens across all of nature's values and benefits, including for climate risk and resilience. And then I just want to point out before we leave this tour that we have extensive methods documentation, a glossary where you can learn more about all the different data sets and definitions. And then as Adam pointed out, we have resources here And this is a living document. So if you have ideas of resources to put in here, we would love to hear them to really grow this section and make it a one-stop shop, useful place for information across all of these different themes. And with that, I will pass it back to Adam.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Let's see, Tom, I think you've been looking at a few of these questions. Did you want to lead us off with any? I was just trying to scroll through it.
Yeah, you bet. Actually, the other Tom, our other team member Tom, has been dutifully cataloging them. Tom Baring, can I ask you to give us some questions from the chat?
Yeah, and let's see, I see some queued up right there. One from Megan Sullivan. Has housing
Oh,
cost
perfect.
burden been considered in the demographics section and not simply income? That was one that, yeah, we were looking at the data and wanted to get it in. It was really just a funding issue where we only had so much limited. So if we were choosing between housing burden and low income one, but that's to say, yeah, as I mentioned, we're very interested in continuing to expand the tool.
And then Adam and Carrie, we have another question from Josh Hugg. Have you considered low income being a function of the average median income, maybe 80% of AMI?
Yeah, I thought that's what it was at, but maybe I'm mistaken.
So also, we do have California's the priority populations in there, and priority populations looks at, it combines both CalEnvirosScreen 4.0 and low income communities and low income households. And I'm not sure with that one if it's a 60% or 80% cutoff, but I could look into that in terms of considering low income communities.
I think we were looking at the 80%. Josh, can you maybe clarify? Were you asking if we were using the 80% or if there was a different value you were suggesting? If you're there, Josh Hugg.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 80% is the HUD standard for low income, and then very low income is usually 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And the point there is just simply because CalEnvirosScreen is a comparison of census tracts across the entire state, and the Bay Area in some cases gets the short shrift. Yeah. So area median income at least gives you some internal consistency.
Okay,
yeah,
understood.
So that would be using the entire Bay Area as the
or the MSA, the Metropolitan Service Area.
Okay. It looks like Brian Mendenhall from Valley Water mentioned that Valley Water is using a county, Santa Clara County AMI. And then Christine Penrod is asking, are the data that Carrie you're talking about, is that SB 535 data? Does that ring a bell?
That's CalEnvirosScreen.
Okay.
AB 1550 puts together CalEnvirosScreen plus disadvantaged plus low income. And yeah.
And I think that's what the
under resource communities is another.
I think that was then what makes the California climate priority populations. That last bill you mentioned.
1550.
Yeah, 1550.
I'm not familiar with that term, so I'm not sure.
Okay, well maybe we can double check on that, but that's a great point.
And Jennifer Hooper is chiming in from the demographics report section. Low income is defined as having an income that is 80% of the median household income for California. So it looks like we use the statewide.
Yes, the statewide.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, just looking at the chat.
Oh, okay. Now the statewide one is I'm sorry to be rat-holing on this and taking up your time, but it's important to get it right.
Mhm.
The 80% one assumes that the cost of living is identical across the entire state. You do not want to use that in the Bay Area.
Yeah, no, that's something we can definitely look at and try to maybe work with MTC to see if they
Yeah.
have some data that can be
Yeah,
consistent with their understanding.
Okay, I mean,
Or a
we can provide
threshold.
data too.
Or yes, that would be
Yeah.
helpful as well.
Yeah, Josh, this is Nathan. I'm on the call too. I can help with that too.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you,
Yes.
Nathan. I also want to just mention we have several advisors and supporters on the call today. Josh is one of them, Brian is one of them, Abby Abers, I see several others, Sam Veloz. Great to have you all with us. Excellent. Well, we still have about 5 minutes if folks have other questions.
I had one in the chat. OPR has a demo right now for vulnerable. It's called the Vulnerable Communities Platform, where they're trying to identify areas vulnerable to climate risk. I guess there's an acute interest in this simply because, well, one, because of the issues that these communities are facing, but the climate bond is making reference to vulnerable communities. And I guess the question is, how does this stack up against the OPR platform? Because right now there's no mapping utility that identifies it, so we just don't know if they're prioritizing funding for vulnerable communities. Are they identifying the communities we know that are vulnerable?
Yeah, Josh, I'm going to just drop a link. This is something you can find in our glossary also, but that's the California Climate Investments Priority Populations 2023. That's the source of our data, so I'd be curious, yeah, how that overlaps with kind of what you're talking about right now, because that was a big part of what our thinking was, trying to make sure that we're using the most appropriate data, especially when it's in regards to funding decisions around climate and vulnerable communities. Just curious if that's, oops, I think I just sent it to Tom Baring. Sorry, let me change that to all.
Great. Thanks, Adam. So that sounds like there's some follow-up there.
Yeah.
And again, I think your point about checking in with MTC, definitely want to remain synced up with MTC. Other questions? Oh, sorry.
Questions are, yeah, I mean, anything that people like, gosh, I really wish that could be in there. If you want to email us after or just drop that in the chat, what did we miss? What do you really want to see in there? Obviously, we talked about housing burden already, but I think that might be a nice just way to throw in kind of your wish list if you have any.
The only other one I can think of would be Title I schools or school districts. Free and reduced price lunches and so forth, that as an indicator.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I know schools are an easy one to get.
Great. Shireen is thanking you, Josh, for raising that.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to Shireen also. She was a college friend who brought me into environmental education. So I think this is the ultimate expression of that, bringing the environment to everyone. So,
well,
Adam, you're
great.
amazing.
What's that?
I said you're amazing. It's great
Yeah.
to see you.
We agree.
Yeah.
Well, great. Brian mentioned one data set I'm interested in, but not sure of a source is farm worker housing in unincorporated areas, which are likely to be disadvantaged communities by definition. That's a great point, Brian. Adam, Carrie, are we in the same boat in terms of needing a data source as well? Never heard of. And anybody on the call?
Yeah, we were tracking that a little bit through SCTA, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Through some of our land use, but it's hard to get at.
Josh, did you have a quick comment?
Yeah, I think there is socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, and there's a statutory definition for that that may capture some of that.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Yeah, we'll log that as an enhancement. Well, folks, we're out of time. Thank you so much again for joining us. Adam, thank you. Carrie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And let us know how you're using the tool too. Please feel free to drop us a line.